The first stressor that we're going to focus on is a work hindrance. The fear that e-readers would soon kill the assembly of ink, paper, and glue fueled the development of Barnes & Noble's own tablet, the Nook, which sought but ultimately failed at a cost of more than $1 billion to compete with the Kindle 2 years after Amazon introduced it in 2007. This exemplifies role conflict, as workers were probably pushed to sell the Nooks when it wasn't even in their job description to promote such a thing. This can also be an example of role ambiguity, as workers probably encountered such problems such as being expected to sell Nooks when they weren't trained in doing so, and were left to their own devices for the most part. Workers were never really able to push the sale of Nooks because they had no guidance in doing so. This is also an example of role overload, as the workers were not only expected to work as they normally did before the Nook came out, but they were now expected to sell an entirely new product that was new to them and the market. And finally, this represents daily hassles. Since selling the Nooks were given to regular employees on top of their normal duties, they faced problems in selling the Nook as they had their day-to-day duties to take care of first.
Next, we're going to look at non-work hindrance stressors. Some of these include work-family conflict, negative life events, and financial uncertainty. First, a work-family conflict is a form of role conflict in which the demands of a work role hinder the fulfillment of the demands in a family role. So for Barnes & Noble, in the article we looked at, since they've been competing with Amazon, sales have been in free fall ever since that. In 2018, revenue crashed to $3.7 billion, which was the lowest since 2000. And the company has consistently failed to turn a profit. Losing profits affects employees and can hinder their role at home, as they have more stress to handle than they can bring that home to their families. Next, a negative life event. A negative life event are events such as a divorce or death of a family member that tend to be appraised as a hindrance. So since they're still having losses at work, employees could have negative life events such as a death or a divorce that can impact their lives more, and they get more stressed out with work having a negative impact as well. Lastly, financial uncertainty. Financial uncertainty are uncertainties with regard to the potential for loss of livelihood, savings, or the ability to pay expenses. From the article, financial uncertainty occurs because as the sales go down, the employees realize that since their profits are falling, they're stressed about that their pay could go down, and this could hinder their income. And then here, Barnes & Noble has been at a record fall when it comes to profits ever since creating the Nook and trying to compete with Amazon. And because of this, they have created these three non-work hindrance stressors.
Moving on to the work challenge segment of the stressors diagram, where Barnes & Noble will be opening new locations in significantly underbooked parts of the United States. The article mentions that the CEO, James Daunt, is aiming for a total of 1,500 shops, which would match the company's historical peak. He also sees an opportunity to relocate some of the bigger stores to smaller locations in high-end shopping malls and on street corners in affluent neighborhoods, where he says the brand would fit well alongside with other targets of middle-class spending like Aveda soaps and Peloton exercise bikes. As far as the time pressure aspect, this presents a challenge for workers, as they will have to put in more time to move stores and open locations. But many workers will most likely enjoy reopening these stores and view their work optimistically. As far as work complexity, there will be new employees, and they will have to be trained on handling, running, and working in a Barnes & Noble store, which will present work complexity because of new stores opening. Finally, for work responsibilities, these workers who are new or taking on new stores will have a lot of responsibility in running that store. When there is an existing store with employees who have been there for some time, their responsibility is not as high as it would be if they were opening a store, as it takes a lot of work to open that new location. As far as the non-work challenge part of the stressor diagram, there is one particular thing that was mentioned in the article that is relevant, which was that the test which Barnes& Noble is trying will be whether each bookshop can be mindful enough of the community it's attempting to sell to and curate a stock appealing enough to bring back readers. Now, as far as family time demand goes, the employees in these bookshops each have family commitments, and it may come in conflict with work. And as far as the personal development, there is the case where an employee might be pursuing additional education, which of course would cause them to have less time for work or thinking power to put towards the curation of the bookstore they work at. And finally, when we look at the positive life events, there are definitely some that can still create stress. For example, if an employee is getting married and is doing all the planning, because of this, they are not putting as much effort into their work in making sure that the bookstores are curating well.